families, creating a lifetime of memories. Sadly, some families are denied these important moments due to the sad practice of alienation. These are families divided.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Families Divided TV. We want to thank you for being a part of us. It means so much. We've grown a lot, and we really need to continue to grow to reach more people, both professional and alienated family members. And to do so, we need your help. If you haven't subscribed already to our YouTube channel here, please do so. It doesn't cost anything for you. So hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to be notified when we post new videos, which we do regularly, click on the bell and you'll be notified as well. We really appreciate this. We want to do all we can to bring awareness to the abuse of alienation. So thanks. Today we're going to hear from Joep Zander. He is an alienated dad and an alienated grandfather who lives in the Netherlands, as I said, and he's an artist. He's going to be speaking to us about paternity discrimination. And I want you to take a listen to what he has to say. Paternity discrimination is a fact. There are many startling examples of this that were often concealed by the media until now. The worst of this is the explicit discrimination by the judiciary. Discrimination against women is also a fact, but a fact that has been worked on in recent decades and that also receives the full attention of the media all the time. In this presentation, Joep tries to do justice to both the mechanisms, to give an interpretation of them, and above all, to analyze the connection between these two forms of discrimination. He emphasizes what is happening in the field of parental alienation and how children are mistakenly being the battlefield of something that resembles a battle of the sexes, but on closer inspection shows that we're being played apart by higher powers and therefore also lose the natural connection between children, parents, and grandparents to the state. This is really good, so really pay close attention. We're also going to hear from Mary Alvarez, Dr. Mary Alvarez. She is going to be one of our presenters at our upcoming conference in October, Alienation, the Truth Regarding the Trauma and the Abuse. She's going to share what she's going to be speaking on. We're going to have 11 presenters at this virtual international conference. Now's the time to register. Many have, and we're really excited. This is a 2.5-day event. It starts on Friday night and it runs all the way through 10 o'clock Saturday night. So you don't want to miss this. So please be a part of this great ministry and this great conference. If you'll go to the webpage, our website, familyaccess.info, you'll see all the information about it. I want to let you know, and I really mean this from the bottom of my heart, this is the strongest conference that we've ever had on alienation and the abuse. This is really bringing out some information that needs to be said. And I'm so glad we're finally doing it. So please don't miss this. Please be a part of it. Invite professionals as well as alienated family members. We want this to be an impact. I promise you this will be the best conference we've ever had. So thank you very much. And I hope you'll register today. We're going to be back in just a minute with Joep Zander and Dr. Mary Alvarez right after these messages.
Divorce and co-parenting are a major life interruption for families, especially the kids, but also for parents and grandparents. And it's even worse in blame-filled, high-conflict cases. When parents engage in alienation by turning the kids against the other parent or grandparents, kids suffer. They're denied the opportunity to build the 4 big skills necessary for future resilience. New Ways for Families online class can help. Parents learn to use our popular BIF and EAR skills to calm the conflict and stop the hostile emails and texts. And we even have a class for kids and parents to learn together. Research shows a 75% improvement in joint parental decision-making after this course is taken, plus overall improvements for kids' well-being. Don't wait to make this affordable investment in your children's future and improve your well-being too. Start learning new ways for your family today at conflictplaybook.com.
Sadly, too many know the pain and trauma associated with parental and grandparent alienation. Family Access, Fighting for Children's Rights, will present an important international virtual conference on October the 13th through the 15th, 2023. The conference, entitled Alienation, The Truth Regarding the Trauma and Abuse, will feature world-renowned experts in the field of alienation. You'll join the conference event coordinator, Elaine Cobb, and moderator, Megan Hunter, as they introduce you to keynote speaker, Dr. Edward Kruk. Plus, you'll hear important presentations from Dr. Joshua Coleman, Lisa Rothfuss, Dr. Mary Alvarez, Chris Smith, Bill Eddy, Dr. Noel Hunter, Dr. Sue Kornblum, Dr. William Burnett, Megan Hunter, and Jordan Traeger. Join the many attendees already securing their spot for the conference entitled Alienation, The Truth Regarding the Trauma and Abuse. For information, visit familyaccess.info for all the details. This special conference is being hosted by Family Access, Fighting for Children's Rights, Steel Partners Foundation, and PASCA, Parental Alienation is Child Abuse.
Hello, everyone. Here, I have a talk with you about discrimination and parental alienation. And well, both are heavy things, and there are some things that in which discrimination has a lot to do with parental alienation. I called this presentation Discrimination, the Breaking Point. It's about paternal discrimination, it's about parental discrimination and parental alienation. There was a subtitle, What the State Breaks Family and Women Induces Parental Alienation. So I do try to do justice to the discrimination of fathers and also of women, because both happens. But I have a certain accent today on the discrimination of fathers, and I mean to say fathers and not men, because the way fatherhood is the part of being a man which is discriminated, and to be more precise, I call it fatherhood. And because I will put the accent on the way fathers relate to their children, the fatherhood in which they have the relation with their children. Well, I would say father is exactly that, but to have no misunderstandings left, I did it that way. So I talk about how children are mistakenly being battlefield of something that resembles a battle of the sexes, but on closer inspection shows that we are being played apart by higher powers, and therefore also lose the natural connection between children, parents, and grandparents to the state. So I talk with you about the position of fatherhood in the process of alienation, and fatherhood alienation on the different levels of micro, meso, and macro level, without necessarily saying someone is guilty, except perhaps the state and the state institutions. I first start with you to say something about me as a person, introduce myself to you. I'm a pedagogue, so I learned for child psychology is a more known term in English, And I published a lot of books, 5 books, and a lot of articles, as well as scholar articles on parental alienation. And I introduced the Dutch term for parental alienation being out-of-stoting syndrome in the Netherlands. And as well, I'm an artist. I paint, I make paintings, and one of my paintings, you see it here on this sheet on the left, has been held shortly held up in the Dutch Senate some 20 years ago, when they discussed the new law on shared custody, which came instead of single parent custody, and with some success, although the judiciary refused to introduce it. Well, I as well have a daughter and a daughter. You see her here, which from whom I was alienated, and well, so there under you see with me with the guitar. I'm a musician as well, and I'm an activist. You see me on the right side, where I speak to my public on the Malieveld, that's near the Dutch government buildings, and you see the government buildings behind in that photo, in that image. I'm also father of a son, and which I walk through the world and through our lives, which my son is still in picture for me, and I'm in picture for him, and we have a great walks, as you can see here in Bulgaria. Oh yeah, forgot to mention I have a granddaughter, which is a son of my daughter, and it's, well, relationships are often up and often down. Parental alienation syndrome, well, most of my listeners here will know already a lot about parental alienation, so I won't go too deep in the basics of that. But I will give you one quotation of a Dutch social assistant who said this about parental alienation. If you give your children no hope for the future, you're essentially cut off the oxygen. Perhaps the most important thing is that the child feels free to love both parents. If there's a ban on this, the basic confidence of the child in himself and in relationships, intimate relationships and relationships in the outside world, gets systematically destroyed. So she says the child gets no oxygen. That's a meaningful thing. And a good way to express what the child feels in parental alienation, because we often concentrate on what the parent feels, but the child is taken away the air, taken away the breath. Well, at first look, you could perhaps say, well, parental alienation is gender neutral, but we know from history that the connection of fathers and children has become bad, and a lot of fathers don't see their children, and a lot more than mothers miss their children. Although it's both is true, both happens. And I think the discrimination of women inflicts past because we don't value the other person when we discriminate her, and the discrimination of especially of fathers inflicts past because it's in itself, discrimination is something that hurts, that it's denigrating the other person, and denigrating is an important process in getting alienated. I must say, in my practice, I often have seen mothers who say that they're alienated from their children, and that's true. I often have seen that the process of in alienation with children not seeing their mothers is often different than that from fathers. I won't go too deep in that. But what happens in general in parental alienation, but especially in these cases, is that the parent starts alienating the other parent even a bit unconscious. And so she doesn't know what she really is doing. The kind of relation between mother and a child is so logic and so deep in the unconscious part of our body, of our brains, that they don't realize what they're doing so now and then, because they're supported by the environment in doing the things they do, and often is that staying between the father and the child without bad ideas about it. Well, you see in this picture perhaps a word. The word is not very readable, and it points at the fact that we discriminate with our own eyes if we want to see letters or an image on a background. And if you look a bit longer on this picture, you see what is here, and that stands Fatherhood Discrimination. And well, it tells something about what happens with fatherhood discrimination. Fatherhood discrimination often is hidden back in our society. It isn't mentioned essentially in a lot of media. Fathers have difficulties to speak out about their experiences, perhaps a bit when they stay victim, but when they point at the causes of the alienation, they're confronted with a lot of censorship. And so a lot of fathers don't tell anything about it anymore, even don't answer scientists who try to research the problem. So I'll give you a definition of fatherhood discrimination. Fatherhood discrimination is a subordination of fathers in the care of children compared to mothers, despite the right to equal parenthood. And father discrimination is very widespread and normalized. And the other word for it, paternity discrimination, is systemic and can therefore never be regarded as an isolated phenomenon. What I say by this is it has a place in a whole social structure. You see it everywhere inside. Well, I come back to this later on here. I come back here. So there's a kind of causal model on the problem of fatherhood in the context of the family, mother, father, child. And you see there are influences from different sides on the family. It's from institutes like the government, the youth care organizations. It's from politics, it's from history, and it's from ideology. And ideology, well, what could it be? Like feminism in itself. Feminism wants father likes father to be more caring with their children, but that's often is a kind of theory that even makes it more difficult to do this in practice. And often mothers have problems to let go the children, and so they don't work on sharing the care with the fathers. Not all, of course not, but that's a kind of thing that happens within feminism. Feminism sometimes goes from being an idea, an ideology, to a kind of women's interest idea. So I go on. So the whole problem, or alienation problem, but the whole discriminatory problem is based in history. And I mentioned 3 facts, historical facts about this. Before the Industrial Revolution, so let's say in 1850, though a lot of fathers were craftsmen or farmers, and they had a daily contact different times during the day. They had contact with their children because their children looked at what they did as a craftsman, as a farmer. But later on in the Industrial Revolution, they became the heroes of the family, outside the family. So they didn't have much contact with the children, but they earned the money for the family. And well, in the beginning time, it was a kind of heroism that they did that. In the very beginning, mothers and children also worked in factories, but later fathers, men became the heroes outside. So there was a tendency to be positive about that, and that changed to a bit negative. Another historical fact is the tender years doctrine that says that mothers are better for younger children than fathers. Somewhere it is not true. Even when the child is still not born, the fathers have influences, and we can find that. It's proved by research on that. So, and the other thing I already mentioned, it is the one-way feminism. Well, I said it already. History has its trails. So it's not that when we finished discrimination by changing the law, like the law for shared parenthood in 1998 here in Holland, where I am from, directly changed the situation of parents. Even the judges got on to split parents in one parent who had the whole care, and perhaps the other parent the visitation right, which was quite limited for in weekends or so. So there are trails of the history, and you could compare a bit with other tragedies in human history, like slavery. The slavery didn't end somewhere in the 19th century when most laws were changed on that, but it still has its effects. And it has also effects in our memory. So we have a collective memory about how we arrange father and mother roles. And it's even in my memory, you know, when this whole problem started, I thought, well, I know it from somewhere. Somewhere I know that mothers have the main, well, I can't fight it. I can't take over the role of the mother. It's somewhere in our minds. It's even, well, you can see it's in our minds when we look at encyclopedias. Well, what you see here is an old encyclopedia from the before Wikipedia time. It says that fatherhood is a biological and juridical relation of a man to a child. So you hear that well, just biological and juridical. That was the definition of fatherhood in that one of the most important encyclopedias of that time, the Encarta Encyclopedia. And then, well, when Wikipedia started, I thought, well, I can add something to Wikipedia to make a better definition, in which I also can define fatherhood by emotional relationship, by social relationship. And so I did that, and I think that still is on the Wikipedia. There have been a lot of research on parenthood. Long time research was mostly done just to the role of the mother and the child. So there's an but there is as well done some research on men and boys, and men and daughters, and on men especially. Men are the people who are the most in the prisons. They one of the on 4 children don't see their father. Well, that's all research which is done, with data analysis done on that. But I have to say, a lot of research, although it's fathers are included now, it's done with some bias. I give you an example of a very recent research by Professor Kalmijn, a Dutch professor, who researched one of his hypotheses was how are the chances of keeping in contact with your children after divorce, depending on the quality, the time you spend before divorce, the attention, the quality, and the quantity of time. And and he had hypothesis that it worked when fathers do more, give more energy in caring for children, in spending time with their children. And that was his hypothesis. And when he researched this, you see that he excluded fathers who lost the contact. And so but he really concluded, and that was a confirmation of his hypothesis, was that, yeah, it helps when fathers invest more time in their children, and it helps also after divorce. But my hypothesis would be that, well, it perhaps helps when fathers do a bit more on children care, but when it becomes more than one day and they take over a bit the role of the mother, for mothers feel fear, and fear that they lose something which is perhaps essential in their mind. So exactly that group of fathers who lost contact might be the group of fathers who did invest a lot in their children. So he had a bias in this research by not looking at this situations very clear. One of the worst things in discrimination is when people have to assess other people, like judges, do discriminate themselves. Courts in Holland and Belgium, but I'm sure it's about in the whole Western world, have such a bias about who cares for the children that it even exists that there are forms. I discovered several forms in which the custody is pre-printed going to the mother. You see it in this sheet, and then pre-printed the father can pay is the secondary custody holder, which is was nothing in the Dutch law, and he perhaps get a visitation rule and can pay alimony. Well, this is crazy, and what happens here is not only the reflection of a situation in which judges are biased against fathers and mothers, but it's also and by that way a reflection of a society who biases fathers, it's also something they do, and it's also something that gives less trust in the judiciary system. And it affects future, like I said about history, even despite removal. Well, we never got any excuse for this kind of forms for any court in Holland, although we discovered several courts who were guilty on this bias. So even then, I tried to put this form as a picture on the Wikipedia. And there you see that it's even not very, well, that's not what you're expected to do as a Wikipedia contributor, to make other people aware of this kind of things, miss things in the judiciary. It was removed, the whole form was removed from all Wikipedias because it was on the international Wikipedia pages. And well, so what was, so they tried to dissolve this form, and instead of it, it would be better to dissolve the judge, which you see happen here on the image on the right side. You can see what happens with the discrimination between fathers and mothers when you look, you have a Google search look at mother and child connected in texts and father and child connected in texts. If you do that research, at least this week I did it, you see that mother-child connections are in between quotation marks, they are quite close connected, and without quotation marks they are connected. You see that father and child are much less connected than mother and child, those words in texts. If you but if you look at the images on the internet, what you see is that well, hey, fathers are even more connected with children. So I think images more represent our wishes and the wishful thinking perhaps, but also the wishes to see equal parentings, to see fathers and mothers with children in an equivalent situation. Language in general is an important means of perpetuating situations, but also of change. Papa is sometimes a much better term than father, so perhaps I have to do this research again, because it's not only international, but also indicates the emotional bond between father and child more than the term father, which especially in the women's movement associates a lot with the relationship of authority. That's you said paternalism. So what happens is that we have bad mouthing, all things that happen in parental alienation, in the way children are alienated. It happens at every level. I gave you some examples: judiciary, science, women's organizations, childcare organizations, perhaps even father organizations themselves. So there happen things at a macro level. There happen things at a meso level. Let's say the schools and so on, who have to do to handle things with fathers and mothers who are in a kind of struggle about children. So it triples to the downwards to the micro level of family and children are the lowest level in this scheme. So you see there's a lot of pressure on the child. you can see some examples I put together, which you can in the first row. First row, you can see the kinds of rejection strategies which are researched in BS by Baker and Darnell and by Goodar, and you see what are the equivalents in micro, meso, and macro mechanisms. I don't want to stay here very long. I give some other examples of fatherhood discrimination. One is that one-sided assistance. So when fathers get in troubles, and they often get in very much trouble, they have not so much possibilities to seek assistance for that. And when they get assistance, it's often very biased. And the women organizations have organized, and that's nothing wrong with that, their own way of help and assistance in all kind of troublesome situations. So it's very difficult for fathers to live a normal life and don't get too depressed. And often the strategy they use is to keep their mouth shut and try another life away with another relation and with other children. So you see a kind of fatherhood which is changing from one nest to the other nest, and it's a kind of diaspora from fatherhood. Another example is that in Holland there were experts who said that changing diapers is not something a man should do. Why does he do that? And that give him a negative expert advice for in the direction of the youth care. So he couldn't see his child, and this was one of the reasons, because they said it was improper to change diapers for men. It's improper as well to be there's something between biological father and father. Sometimes fathers are denigrated, that they are just a biological father. You never say that for a mother. And even it happens, or at least here in Europe, that children are threatened to be punished when they ask for the father, ask for contact with the father. So here in the picture on the right side, you see a picture of mine. That's the one who was held up in the Senate, and it shows you a father who's becoming a kind of hidden in a shield, in a harness, and the child with the mother who's looking at it. Well, what should I do about it? But there's still a little gate, a little hole in the whole harness. Well, I talked about the tender years consent, the presumption. One of the examples here is from an expert pedagogical colleague of mine, who said that a younger child below 2 months has not any ID, not any negative influence if a father leaves at a young at that young age. And well, we know from research that even a child an unborn child feels the influence of a father who can even make contact with his hands with the baby in the mother. So I already said something about diaspora. That's the spread out. We use it in other situations in this world, but I think there's also a kind of diaspora from fathers. Fathers are scattered around without contact, without having contact with their children, with the society, and they're there and they try to have some contact with children which are not their children, with the children in which they are stepfather and so on. Okay, it happens too with some mothers, of course, but the situation of others is often very, very bad. They get homeless, they get a lot of more suicidal than mothers. Well, what we should do, what the solution is that we do our education, or we do our care much more equal, and we need equal parenting for that, equivalent parenting. And we did a lot of, well, I myself did a lot of effort to get equivalent parenting in the Dutch law. It's in the law now. It's in the law of a lot of Western countries, but it's not always the practice. It's still difficult, and even for ourselves, even for fathers themselves, it's difficult to get in that role. And from the upside, from the government, it's made often difficult by taxes, housing, and equal civil status is often not possible. So it's not possible to have a child on 2 addresses, which would be necessary for a real equal parenting in when the mother and the father don't live together anymore. So I'll finish here, and I hope emancipation of fathers will lead to emancipation of motherhood as well, of women as well. And so one of the things we did in Holland was the Fatherhood Trophy, but Fatherhood NV was it called, and that means it's also for women who do something for the good practice of fatherhood. So it was given to a lot of people to award good fatherhood practices. So I hope now I've given you some insight in my view on paternal discrimination and parental alienation and how it influences between each other. And so I hope to see you again somewhere here on this channel, and thank you for being here, for letting me do this presentation. So that's the end.
Hi, this is Dr. Mary Alvarez. I am a psychologist in Austin, Texas, and do a lot of work in the field of parental alienation. I'm so happy to be part of the 2023 conference this coming year, and would like to help you understand my topic, what I will be discussing. So my title is Parental Alienation is a Form of Child Psychological Abuse. And so no longer is this disputed in the field by the experts in parental alienation. And what I would like to illustrate in my talk is how psychological abuse meets the criteria for an adverse childhood experience. And then there's lots of research on adverse childhood experiences and what happens to a child's psychological as well as brain development. And so since parental alienation is considered psychological abuse, then we can extrapolate that the things that happen to children who experience adverse childhood experiences are happening to children who have been influenced by a parent unnecessarily and unduly against the other parent, and that relationship has been interfered and fractured. So we will talk about some of the effects that happen to children currently when one parent is trying to erase the other parent from the child's life, such as the rates of depression, the rates of anxiety, the rates of externalizing behavior, which would be things like conduct problems, oppositional defiance in the child. I'll also discuss with you the role of toxic stress and what happens neurologically to a child's brain development when they are in toxic stress as a result of parental alienation. And the research also underscores what can happen long term to these children, again, both psychologically as well as neurologically. There are some neurological effects that appear to be permanent. And so that's very serious. And my commitment to parental alienation is to reduce those negative outcomes for children through the services that I provide and the educational services that I do. Because while you can't necessarily see what's happening at the time that the child is involved in an alienation situation, the research will illustrate what does happen and what potentially can happen long term. So I look forward to 2023 and invite you to view my conference participation piece. Thank you very much.
Next week on Families Divided TV, Melanie Gill will speak to us about the complex face of narcissism, from attachment findings in parental alienation cases.